Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got a very interesting show for you today, I hope. We start out with old Shifty Schiff. We hadn't talked about old Shifty lately, but he was in a panel yesterday, and he said that we may all need to move to Canada soon, and for him, it couldn't be soon enough. And then I want to get into a story that I tried to get into yesterday, didn't have quite the time to do it justice, but we're going to get into it today, I promise you. And that's about the whole controversy of social media, the threat potentially of Donald Trump abandoning Twitter, going to something like Parler, those types of things. We're going to talk about social media, Donald Trump, and conservatives in general. And then if we have time, we're going to get into our third story. Ocasio-Cortez cries foul because she's saying that the $1 billion, yes, $1 billion with a B dollars, that the New York City Council, led by Comrade Bill de Blasio, cut from the police budget is really a fake cut and doesn't really exist. So we'll get into that as well, hopefully. But we start out with an article from a publication I've used every now and then called Just the News. And it says, we may all be moving to Canada soon, Schiff says at a disinformation and election interference talk. Well, disinformation is something he specializes in, right? Representative Adam Schiff, but he said that he might want to move to Canada during a discussion about disinformation and election interference on social media. Well, can we start like one of those funds now, as like a GoFundMe or some kind of fund? I mean, if you're lacking in funds, Mr. Schiff, to get to Canada, I think we can help you. Because I don't know about you, but I'd love to see him in the Canadian Parliament, much better than in the House of Representatives. But maybe we can make him a backbencher. You think? Isn't that going to be special if the Republicans can actually, riding a Trump wave, take over the House? I hadn't thought about this much lately, but man, wouldn't it be cool to make old Jerry Nadler and Shifty Schiff and Pelosi, because you know they'll get reelected most likely. But wouldn't it be great to make those three, among others, backbenchers, is a reason to go to polls, if nothing else, to make the Three Stooges, Jerry Nadler, Adam Schiff, and Nancy Pelosi, those Three Stooges, to make them backbenchers would be worth about anything to me. So if we need to start a fund to make that happen, we could do it. Go to Canada, right? But this is what old Shifty said. He said, we may all be moving to Canada soon. And he said this during a forum on social media disinformation and election interference organized by George Washington University. I'm surprised he went to George Washington University. Didn't that guy own slaves? I mean, Shifty Schiff, he must be supporting slaves. Of course, if he's a Democrat, they always have. But let me just tell you, let's talk about this whole social media thing in general, about how the Russians, you know, they're the reason Donald Trump is in the White House. And of course, we hadn't really talked about it, but let me give you my quick opinion on this whole bounty deal. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this idea that the Russians are paying bounty to kill our soldiers in Afghanistan. The main reason I hadn't talked about it is because if true, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, to me, I'm not downplaying it. Don't misunderstand me. Anytime our soldiers are in harm's way, let alone killed, it is a huge deal. What I'm saying is I just assume that Russia, China, and probably some people we might even consider our friends are doing stuff like this, paying people to kill our people. I mean, we know, like, for instance, in the Middle East, I mean, they celebrate children strapping bombs on themselves and blowing up Israelis. I mean, they name streets after them in the occupied territories, for God's sake. So this idea that Russia might have actually paid a bounty on our soldiers, I'm not downplaying it once again, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. I mean, I just assume they do that all the time. That's why I really hadn't talked about it. But back to this whole Russian interference, man. It's largely been a hoax. This idea, especially back in 2016, the idea that the Russians actually are the reason why Donald Trump is in the White House based on expenditures on social media is ridiculous. Remember that Facebook came out and basically said that as near as they could tell that the Russians spent like $100,000, like not $100 million, $100,000 on Facebook ads manipulation that interfered with the election. Whether or not they helped Trump or not is, but $100,000. Come on, man, that's couch cushion money. If you really believe that you can influence the election of the President of the United States for $100,000, well, then, hey, I could be able to raise that. If true, then surely we could raise that in a few weeks and assure Donald Trump the White House. Let's go ahead and make it 200,000 while we're at it. But it's been largely a hoax. I hadn't played this tape in a while. This tape's a couple years old, but it's actually the CEO of Google at that time testifying before Congress when Chairman Jerry Nadler's asking him about the seriousness. I think you guys have found out how much the Russians spent on Google.
According to media reports, Google found
Let's
out
play
that
it.
Russian agents spent thousands of dollars to purchase ads on its advertising platforms that span multiple Google products as part of the Russian agents' campaign to interfere in the election 2 years ago. Additionally, Juniper Downs, head of global policy for YouTube, testified in July that YouTube had identified and shut down multiple channels containing thousands of videos associated with the Russian misinformation campaign. Does Google now know the full extent to which its online platforms were exploited by Russian actors in the election 2 years ago?
We have, we undertook a very thorough investigation, and in 2016, we now know that there were two main ad accounts linked to Russia, which advertised on Google for about $4,700 in advertising. We also found other limited...
Total of $4,700?
That's right. Which was, no amount is okay here, but, we found limited activity, improper activity. We have learned a lot from that, and we've, dramatically increased the protections we have around
That's
our...
good enough. They learned a lot from that. I mean, if true, I keep using, I love that Democratic phrase, if true, because you can say anything after that. If true that Google spent or found out that the Russians spent $4,700, I bet they spent $1 million finding out that the Russians spent $4,700. I mean, come on, man. So combined between Facebook and Google, we got 100,000 plus 4,700 from Google. I mean, okay, yeah, that did it. That's surely the reason why Trump is in the White House. These people have no shame, man. They really they still are pushing the whole internet deal. And I'm gonna expand on why I think it's total BS more in just a moment. Schiff, who was one of the House impeachment managers, we all remember that, in the case against President Trump, said he remains most concerned about Russian interference on social media heading into the November election and big tech's handling of the issue. I just had this picture pop in my head of like the Dr. Evil, I think, in the Stephen Austin movies or whatever, where he's going, we're going to hold the world hostage for $1 million. Million, they're like, $1 million? $1 billion. I mean, I can see Putin now standing there, we're going to run the elections for $100,000. I mean, just crazy, man. But they're Russia. So I guess old Shifty Schiff, he's worried about the Russians. Is he channeling his inner Hillary? I mean, of course, she's like the queen of Russia, man. Everybody's going around. If you're a Russian, you're a Russianite. You're a Russian backer. Yeah, I haven't heard what happened between her and what's her name? I can't even think of her name now, Billy Bob. He might help me think of it in a minute. The gal that, that Hillary said she's a Russian agent. And she was running for president. I guess she's a has, but I can't even think of her name now. Yeah, it'll come to me. Reflecting in a recent House Intelligence Committee hearing with social media companies, Schiff said he gets the sense that there's something going on at Twitter, that something is afoul, something is amiss at Twitter, that maybe we've reached the last straw of what management of Twitter can take in terms of what they're seeing, how their platform is being used. Twitter's responding to the mob, man. I mean, President Trump, if we're going to talk about President Trump specifically in Twitter in just a moment, but think about this. President Trump has over 60 million, almost approaches 70 million followers on Twitter. I mean, he dwarfs everybody else. If he were to actually say, I'm done with you, Twitter would probably go away. I mean, what would be the point of having Twitter anymore? And I got to say, I got a Twitter account. It's at John Martin Talks. Billy Bob's here is at Billy Bob Bass 1. And, I get on it from time to time. I spend a lot more time on Facebook and now on YouTube. By the way, if you're not watching us on YouTube, I hope you will. I try to respond to comments. If you really want to help the show, go there and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You just have to spell it all the way out, John Martin Talks, and it'll pop up there. I'm waiting for the day when you just start part of my name and it pops up there. Then I'll know I've really arrived. Of course, so algorithm that crosses all these things could be keeping me down. If you don't know algorithm, man, you better be kind to old Al. Apparently, he's one of the strongest people on social media is algorithm. Back to the article, it says, because Billy Bob, he is my psychic sidekick. He tells me to get back on it. He also said, talking about Shifty Schiff, that Facebook will need to be pulled and dragged into this era of corporate responsibility. The economic incentives are simply too powerful for continuation of the status quo. Translation, what Schiff is saying there is that Facebook, you might be a multi-billion-dollar company, but you better toe the line and start, hawking, becoming a lapdog for the hardcore left, which they pretty much are already. All deference to old Al, just understand. But Schiff is basically saying that Facebook is not far enough left for him. Imagine that, Facebook not far enough left. It's just crazy, man. But then he went on to share his impression of Google. They $4,700, the Russians. He probably should have talked to his buddy old Jerry Hot Dog Nadler, that, Hot Dog Eating Nadler. That guy could probably win that contest this summer. I wonder if they're going to have that or not. Maybe social distancing from hot dogs might be a thing. But Shifty Schiff, man, he is all over Google and YouTube right now. He shared his impression of Google. He said, until proven otherwise, I mean, I love how he talks like that, have the sense with respect to Google, YouTube, that their strategy to avoid the scrutiny of the other platforms and disclose as little as possible. So he's basically saying, once again, that Google, who has been deplatforming people through YouTube, and are there anybody but conservatives being deplatformed? These guys insinuate that Google, YouTube, which is kind of one and the same, Twitter and Facebook are in the pockets of the alt-right. I mean, how much fantasy world do these people live in? It's just unbelievable. He said it's not unlike, although I'm sure they won't appreciate this analogy, the president's view that if you don't test it, there is no virus. So they're all over this about the coronavirus. 100,000 cases a day is what Fauci says we're going to have. And we might. We might already have that now. It might be underreported. And there's a new flu developing in China. Let's face the facts, ladies and gentlemen. In the modern world, with the way we can go back and forth, with the literally billions of people around the world, especially over 1.5 billion, I think, in China now, we're going to be dealing with pandemic and sickness type stuff. That's going to be something we're going to be dealing with for the rest of our lives, probably until we come up with some, Star Trek cure for these viruses or something, because it's just kind of part of this Malthusian principle, if you will. And if you don't know what that means, look it up. But it is pretty scary stuff. That basically the Malthusian principle is that when any population, he's talking about animals, but human beings at the heart, we are animals. And we've certainly been showing that a lot lately. But, when they reach a certain tipping point, that something like a virus or a war, if you will, in human beings wipes them back out because nature won't support an overpopulation. At some point, it levels out. And if you believe any part of that, which I think much of that is probably true, and if it weren't for like modern agriculture, primarily developed in capitalist countries, by the way, like the United States of America, we'd probably already reached that tipping point when you look at feeding ourselves. I mean, crop capacities have gone up 100-fold, it seems, certainly 10-fold, almost literally in my lifetime. Anyway, I didn't mean to get sidetracked, but my point being that we're going to be dealing. It is part of the population, if you will, the ability to basically be anywhere on the planet Earth in a day. I mean, those types of things are going to lead pandemic. And by the way, population. Do you remember when the left used to actually be worried about population control? Now they don't seem to care about it. Now they want to control the population of old white dudes like me, like Oprah Winfrey said a while back. Some of us just got to die. And I guess she's talking about me. So they want to control the population of us old white dudes. But other than that, man, population, they don't even talk about that, man. But he goes on to say, if they don't discuss it, talking about Google and YouTube, if they don't discuss it, reveal it, there's no problem. And so nothing, I guess, from the hearing shook those impressions, but time will tell. So basically, he's saying that social media is in the pocket of Donald Trump and the MAGA people and the hardcore alt-right, and that something's got to be done. But Google and YouTube, man, they're just leftist organizations. Does anyone really dispute that? I mean, they are extremely liberal. Remember, Google got caught with their kind of proverbial pants down, essentially saying that they were going to try to oust Donald Trump, to try to increase certain segments of the population voting. And they're going to do the same thing now. This whole thing, ladies and gentlemen, boils down to this. Do you believe in the fantasy of the left? Because this is what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that in 2016, there was some guy in his basement in Michigan or Pennsylvania or maybe even in Florida, and he was all for Hillary. He had the I'm with her t-shirt on. He said he had the Hillary bumper sticker on the Prius outside, and he was sitting there on Facebook minding his own business, him or her, and they were all for Hillary, all for Hillary. And then some kind of Russian paid ad came on to Facebook, and they went from I'm with her to MAGA, MAGA, and they went out and burned the Prius. I haven't met anybody like that, have you? But that's what they want to paint. And here's the real key to show you that they're totally full of crap. Now, they claim a great victory in 2018, right? They being the progressives. They took over the House of Representatives. And it's true, even though reality is we increased the hold, conservatives did, on the Senate. And hopefully we will again. But they won it was a blue wave, right? But you don't hear anything about how the Russians impacted that, right? So we're to believe that the Russians were all for Donald Trump. So they set up this interference. They spent $100K on Facebook and $4,700, according to Google himself, on their two accounts. So they divided it into two. They were trying to, I guess, launder that money. And somehow they put Donald Trump in the White House. But 2 years later, they basically hamstrung his presidency by putting Pelosi on the throne in the House of Representatives. I mean, that's what we're supposed to believe. I don't know, man. All I can tell you is we're going to, if we want these people like Schiff to really go to Canada, we've got to match their machine, because the Democrats have a machine. The media right now, look at, all you got to do is just do a cursory search of the media, and it is 100% negative for Donald Trump and 100% positive for Joe Biden, to the point that Joe Biden had a press conference, the first one he's had since he went into hiding, and said in that press conference yesterday, and I basically can quote it, he was asked about his cognitive issues, and he said, I can't wait to showcase my cognitive abilities against Donald Trump, basically, in the debate. So, hey, bring it on, man. I hope that's true. But they have one heck of a machine, the Democrats. I mean, they got the dead vote and everything else they're going to do, the mail out ballot, heaven forbid they do that, ballot harvesting. What we need to do as conservatives, as people who support Donald Trump, you know what I've been telling you, you can't take anything for granted. You got to campaign for the man like he's 2 votes behind, and the next 2 people put him over the top. What we need in this country, beyond just electing and re-electing Donald Trump, in my opinion, but it's an opinionated fact, we need what I call a punishing election. We need to turn out in such amounts and such an overwhelming vote that we show everybody that we are going to take our country back. And I'm not talking about back from Barack Obama or back from Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden. I'm talking about back from our own ignorance and apathy that we have let our country. And yes, we patriots have allowed our country to be where it is. Don't look anywhere but in the mirror if you don't like what's happening in America. And I'm talking about myself as well, because we have allowed this country to continue to shift to the left while we were busy doing other things. And now is the time to man the political ramparts, lest we have to man the real ones again. And we don't need to do that because that price has been paid. But we need a punishing election, even to Republicans. And I'm not talking about voting them out of office. You get a chance to put a different one in maybe. But we need to send a clarion message, ladies and gentlemen, that we're, as I said yesterday from that movie Network, mad as hell, and we ain't taking it anymore. Anything less than that, and we're just biding time to the Constitution, like Nancy Pelosi did. That's just my opinion. Anyway, we're going to move on now. We're going to talk about a story that I first kind of touched base on late yesterday from Politico, and it ties into this social media stuff. And the title is, "Would Trump Abandon Twitter?" If he did, it would be the end of it. Big tech is cracking down on Donald Trump, which gives him all the more reason to retreat from his platforms into his own digital ecosystem. Now, some people out there say that are supporters of the president, oh, he tweets too much. I wish he wouldn't tweet so much. And I get it. I understand. And sometimes he'll tweet some things like the guy saying white power the other day, and he took it off. That was a mistake. There's no doubt about it. And you could make the case that President Trump would be better if he laid back and thought a little bit more about some of the things he tweets. But I will say this. Keep in mind that Donald Trump is a master at moving the dialogue a little bit and controlling the dialogue. And he does that through Twitter. He's never going to be able to do it through the mainstream media. He tries, and sometimes I think he tries too hard by giving interviews to like the New York Times and CBS News and all that kind of stuff, but and not enough to true right things. He should be interviewed here. You have an open invitation, by the way, Mr. President, on the John Martin Talk Show, certainly America's Voice News, which we broadcast on. Download the free app, Apple, iPhone, Android and iPhone. You got Fire Stick, Roku, Apple TV. We're on Dish Network channel 219, and we are broadcasting across the Pluto network on any of those streaming services. So check us out. John Martin Talks on America's Voice News. Of course, we're live on Facebook there every day. Good morning. Howdy. How are you guys? But Donald Trump needs to spend more time on networks like America's Voice News than he does on these others. But if he did not tweet, let me just tell you, he would be overwhelmed by the media. The reason why you hear things from the president is a lot to do with Twitter. So, you know, every time I've second guessed the president, he's proved a bit smarter than me, which is why he's up there. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. Donald Trump is a bright, bright man, and thank you so much for being that. So when you keep in mind, when you think about he tweets too much, the power that is in the Twitter and where he would be if he did not use it. So, you know, the president, as I said in the previous story, he is up against a machine, man, a machine. Make no mistake about it. The president's reelection campaign and some of his followers had already been joining and promoting alternative social media sites. A good thing. I'm skeptical of it, and I'll expand on that in a minute. Much as the president pressures Fox News when it displeases him by calling attention to its upstart conservative rival, One America Voice News, not knocking them at all, great network for what they're doing. You also should consider, as I said, AVN, America's Voice News, and JMT. Share this show far and wide. I'm getting a growing audience every day, literally worldwide now. I appreciate it very much. I had one listener message me that she gets up at 4 a.m. every morning just to watch the show. You know who you are. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Please spread this show far and wide because we're combating old algorithm as well. So I need your help to do that. But back to the story. It says, that was before the most recent wave of crackdowns on Trump and his supporters by social media firms seeking to remove content that is deemed offensive, inaccurate, or both. I mean, that's what you talk about a standard. I keep telling you, first of all, if you're new to the show, howdy, how are you? Glad to have you. Where you been? Then you're in the right place now. As my one buddy Craig says, the truth starts now. But do they fact check all these other groups? I mean, I got fact checked on some ridiculous stuff. I got fact checked on a joke. I got put in Facebook jail because I got fact checked on a joke, man. Twitter fact checked Donald Trump the first time they did on an opinion. It wasn't a statement of fact. It was clearly an opinion. How do you fact check an opinion? Because an opinion is an opinion. I guess in the news media, they're confused between opinion and fact because they have blurred those lines completely. As I say, Facebook put me in jail. They put me in, the thing about that got me kind of riled up about when I went in Facebook jail, I reposted something that they put on my news feed. In other words, Facebook, I don't know exactly how it all works, but I'm assuming old Al did it. They put a post on my news feed that I copied and reposted. I would have never even seen the post if they hadn't put it there, but they put me in Facebook jail. And YouTube, this is the one that shocked me the most. YouTube actually took one of my videos off a week or so ago, you may recall it, and all I did was post a video, a factual video. It was just a video showing what happened. You may recall it when this young girl, I think she was like 14 or 15, I believe it was in the Bronx, but it was in one of the New York boroughs. She was black, and she was attacked by a gang of black youths who kicked and beat her to an inch of her life for her Nike Air Jordan and her iPhone. They beat her to death, and all I did was show the footage of that, and they took my video off because it was too violent, I guess. It's what's really happening in the street, you know. I guess CBS News could show it, but JMT, maybe not. So whatever. Anyway, if you're looking for one of my videos and it's gone, that's probably the one. On Monday, the social media platform Reddit shuttered the Donald, a forum for the Trump supporters, as part of a larger clampdown against groups that had violated rules against harassment and hate speech. What is the definition of hate speech? You know, Joe Biden needs to stay in the basement. Is that hate speech or just fact? You know, Joe Biden held his first press conference since March. Is that hate speech or fact? I'm confused about that. Hate speech basically is anything that doesn't toe the leftist line, which is pretty much probably everything I say. But it said the forum clamped down on groups that have violated rules and harassment and hate speech. Separately, Twitch, don't know much about Twitch, a video streaming platform owned by Amazon. As far as I understand, it's a gaming platform, but suspended Trump campaign's channel for rules violations. I guess they did an advertisement. Keep in mind, Amazon is run by Jeff Bezos, right? And him and Trump don't particularly get along. And is there a connection there? Here's something I may have said this yesterday, but I really haven't heard anyone talk about this. And this may be hate speech. But have you ever noticed that like Amazon is now funding Black Lives Matter? Not the idea of Black Lives Matter, but the Marxist group Black Lives Matter. And Black Lives Matter is doing what in the streets? Burning and torching buildings. Actually, it's actually benefiting. Now, this is maybe a conspiracy theory, but Amazon, what business is profiting by the fact that people, either buildings and their businesses are burned down, or people are afraid to go on the street and they're shopping online more now than ever? Who benefits from that? I'm just saying. Maybe there's a connection there, man. But they talk about this, suspension. And I'm just throwing this out there. Have any Black Lives Matters accounts been suspended? I mean, they, after all, had video of them saying, what do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now. Pigs in a blanket, fly them like bacon. In other words, those videos didn't get taken off. I've played those and they didn't get taken off. But the young girl getting beat up, that got taken off. But I wonder if any of their accounts have been suspended. I don't know. I'm kind of afraid to look it up. The moves which came the day after Trump tweeted, talking about these moves that they talk about on Twitch and all, had then, after Trump tweeted, then deleted a video of one of his supporters shouting white power in confrontation with protesters, were just the latest steps by tech companies to distance themselves from Trump and far-right movements. Now, I'm not condoning the whole guy saying white power. I believe in people power. But getting back to this idea of a double standard, here we show that there's only one standard. There's a standard for the right, the alt-right, the hardcore right, the Trump supporters, you MAGA hat wearing sons of guns, dragged society, you 15%ers that are just bad people, just generally bad, like 50 million of you, by the way, if you do the math, that Joe Biden said are just bad, beyond redemption probably. But here's the thing, and I'm not even knocking black power, but if you say black power, you probably champion. You're certainly not banned. Has anyone been banned from saying the word black power? Is that hate speech? I don't know. Why is white power hate speech and black power not? I'm not sure about it. Power, I don't get it, man. But Facebook, so I looked up on Facebook. I did a little cursory search on Facebook about, and I typed in the word black power. And up popped a dozens of them. I only list a few of them. Dozens of groups, probably hundreds, but I just saw about a dozen of them. Black Power Rebels. That's a Facebook group. Is there a white power rebels? I doubt it. Black Power Awakening the Strength Within. It's another group. Black Power, this all capitalized. Black Power, Black Pride, Black Progress. I mean, that's just a few. So think about that. If you were to substitute white power, white pride, and white progress, I don't think that group would last very long. And I got to be honest with you, I didn't even search out the term white power. Because in all honesty, I was afraid that would trigger algorithm, and probably my search alone would put me in Facebook jail. It's just amazing how freedom of speech has been clamped down to, we can't even search for things now. Keep in mind, by the way, and I talked about this over a year ago, that when you Googled the Republican Party of California a while back, it's about a year ago, do you know the real Nazis came up? I'm not talking about the wannabe Nazis that march around in this country. I'm talking about the Hitler, the Goerings, and all that. When you typed in a Google search for Republican Party of California Nazis, the real deal Nazis popped up. And Google said, oh, that was some kind of, algorithmic mistake or something. I don't know. But you never see that happening the other way around. They never have mistakes the other way. You ever notice that? In recent weeks, as Twitter has begun applying disclaimers to some of Trump's tweets for violating its policies, Trump's campaign and many of its online supporters have taken a greater interest in the nascent social media platform Parler. I don't know that much about Parler. I'm thinking about using it. The Twitter-like site markets itself as a free speech friendly and has attracted a small right-leaning user base, the likes of Eric Trump, one of President's sons, and Texas Senator Ted Cruz have both joined the platform this month. And on June 18th, Trump's campaign manager, Brad Parscale, who is an absolute genius, tweeted, "Hey, at Twitter, your days are numbered," along with a link to Parler. Now, I'm not opposed. I don't know that much about some of these alternative sites. Like there's like DuckDuckGo or something as opposed to Google. And I know Bing, for instance, that when they get overwhelmed, they go to Google themselves. So keep that in mind when you're using some of this stuff. But I got some concerns about this. And they're not directed at any particular one. So I'm not downplaying or trashing any of them. As a matter of fact, I might get on some of myself. But my concern is that, right now, Google, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, those four things right there are by far the biggest in the social media. There's nothing that even compares to them, right? I mean, you really can't argue that. Now, I'm not questioning their right to be free and businesses and all that, but they have become literally the marketplace for ideas. And as evidence, our show is broadcast over there. You're not really going to be successful at this moment unless you're on some of those networks, right? It's just the way it is. I'm not championing them in any way. My concern is that if we as a group, if conservative people, if people who support the MAGA agenda, if the alt-right, whatever you want to call people, if they totally, now they're being pushed out no matter what. So that's a whole nother issue. But if you voluntarily basically take yourself out of the mainstream deal of social media and channel your own, does that really strengthen the cause? Because the average person is still going to, let's face it, the vast majority of people aren't political junkies like me and Billy Bob. They're too busy doing other things. Now they are becoming more woke because of, when your neighborhood's burning, it tends to open your eyes a bit. Well, that's another subject, but hopefully they'll get woke in the right way. But my point is, if the danger I'm concerned is if you pull out from the big four or whatever, doesn't that open it more to the left even in general? And can we be successful? I'm not saying don't do it. Also, the amount of money, the head start, if you will, that the Googles and the Facebooks of the world already have could potentially be insurmountable. So you run the danger of that. I'm just throwing this out there. I actually believe we need to fight on every single front, and I'm going to talk more about that as this year progresses. And I'm going to make the point of it here in the next story we're going to talk about. But I'll go ahead and mention it now. If you don't think we are in a fight, I mean an absolute fight in every sense of the word for the soul of this nation and the Constitution of the United States of America to keep it, as Ben Franklin kind of warned us, he gave us a republic if we can keep it. If you don't think we're at a fight for that, then you're not really truly having that's why I battle ignorance and apathy, because I personally believe that we are in the fight of our lifetimes. Every generation has to fight for freedom in some form or fashion. Some of them had to storm the beaches of Normandy. Thank God they did. But we have to storm the beaches, if you will, of social media and everything else. We cannot give up, because to give up, what did old outlaw Josie Wales said? If you give up, you neither win nor lose. You just die, something like that. And that's what we're in. We're in a fight. If you can't look out, you can look out your window in your own neighborhood now, for God's sakes, and see that we're in a fight for our lives. Let's get on to the next story here in the few minutes we have left. This is one of my favorite people, Ocasio-Cortez, man. She's unbelievable. And I mean, you have to admire her to a certain extent. I don't like anything about her, but by God, she is a fighter, man. She is a fighter and a hard worker, and she never, ever gives up. And she is very good at grabbing the limelight. So, there are things about her to admire in a sense that, we could emulate them with better ideas. But anyway, some of y'all really bash me when I say that, but I'm just speaking truth. If you people talk about, oh, she's stupid and everything else. No, she's crazy like a fox. And yes, she says some stuff that we deem stupid, but others are listening to her, I guess like a box of chocolates or something. Anyway, Ocasio-Cortez, this is from a Breitbart article. $1 billion cut to New York's police department isn't enough. It's disingenuous and an illusion, she calls it. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Tuesday slammed an agreement to... Oh, by the way, did you see when she won her primary? Now, there's a Republican challenger against her. I don't think they got a shot, and they're a good Republican challenger. But, of course, I think Pelosi summed it up well, that a glass of water with a D behind it could win in that district. But she got like 74% of the vote against that Cabrera gal that was on MSNBC and had a lot of name recognition. Anyway, you got to give credit where credit's due. Representative Ocasio-Cortez on Tuesday slammed an agreement to slash $1 billion from the budget of New York City Police Department, declaring that decision is not a victory and that the fight to defund, her words, the fight to defund policing continues. Ladies and gentlemen, it's never enough. Now, we're going to get into the details a little bit, and she's got a point about it being somewhat of an illusion based on it, but we'll get into that. But it's never enough for progressives. Never enough. They always carry it to the extremes. Let me just tell you, I say this, but you need to understand this. Progressives, and I've learned this because this town of Gainesville, Florida, where I broadcast from, is one of the most progressive places, big university here in the country. I'm telling you. And I've dealt with them my whole life. And let me just tell you, the one thing I've learned, the many things, but one thing is for sure, they cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be negotiated with. They can only be defeated at the ballot box. That's it. You can only beat them. You can't reason with them, because if you give an inch, they will take the proverbial mile. Just pick any issue that the progressives have won anything on, And where did they take it? They were never satisfied. I think abortion is probably the most glaring one. Remember when it used to be under the Clintons, safe, legal, and rare was the thing? And I'm not even talking about the merits of abortion. That's a whole nother subject. I'm just talking about what's actually happened. It went from being safe, legal, and rare, we're told. We kind of accept the people on the right kind of just basically said, okay, that's the best we could do. They have taken it now to the point that they're debating on making debate whether to kill the baby or not, whether it's when it's alive, after it's born. Just want to make it comfortable while we make the decision. And as I say jokingly, but it's also very serious, at what point are you safe from being aborted? I mean, as long as your mother's alive, my mom lived to be 98. I guess she could have had a change of heart on me all the way up, but where are we going to stop that? Kindergarten? I mean, we're already, as the Rush Limbaugh said, into the fourth trimester. So that, to me, I don't care what you think about the actual issue of abortion. I think you'd have to agree that the progressives have taken it to the most extreme possible, and they do that with everything. So they're not satisfied with $1 billion cut from the New York City Police Department. They want to defund the police, not cut the police, not change the police, defund them. Take them at their word. That's another thing you can learn from progressives. You don't have to, and Trump derangement syndrome has exposed this like never before. Take them at their word. When they say, like Antifa said, no borders, no walls, no USA at all, that, ladies and gentlemen, was a very prophetic statement. And I started telling you about that a couple of years ago. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and the City Council struck a tentative deal to cut $1 billion from the New York City's budget by moving schools. This is where Ocasio-Cortez has her issue. School safety service to the city's Department of Education, according to the Gotham Gazette. It was a political move. Even Comrade de Blasio, as nutty as he is, realizes that you got to have some level of police. He realizes that. So he's trying to play some shenanigans with the money. There's no doubt about it. On Tuesday, Ocasio-Cortez slammed the tentative deal in a pointed statement. I'm going to read you this statement and break it down just a little bit. It's not that long, right? This is Ocasio-Cortez's statement about the $1 billion cut, if you will, transferred out money from the New York City Police Department. She said, and I quote, "Defunding police means defunding police." Take them at their word. "It does not mean budget tricks or funny math." I don't blame her for being upset about that. Either you're going to do it or you're not. And they're all playing tricks. "It does not mean moving school police officers from the NYPD budget to the Department of Education budget so that the exact same police remain in schools." Don't you think, especially in New York, when I showed you that video of that girl, can't show it because it'll take my thing off, getting beat to death right after school, we probably need police in schools, especially in New York. "It does not mean counting overtime cuts or costs, even as New York Police Department ignores every attempt by the city council to curb overtime spending and overspends on overtime anyways." It's interesting that the only place where the left worries about money and budgets and overspending is with the police department. That tells you a lot, right? Because everywhere else, they just don't care. No money for the wall and no money for the police department. So that tells you, or the military for that matter. "It does not mean hiring more police officers, heaven forbid, while cutting more than $800 million from New York City schools. If these reports are accurate, then the proposed cuts to New York Police Department's budget are a disingenuous illusion. This is not a victory. The fight to defund policing continues." Yes, it does. We are in a fight, ladies and gentlemen. Take them at their word. I'm telling you, for God's sakes, take them at their word. You don't have to guess. We're in a fight for the very soul of this nation, and the police defunding a part of it. And of course, when they cut the plain clothes, I mean, what's happening in New York right now? Violence and gun violence is skyrocketing, man. L.A. is moving now. They just voted on this, I think, last night or night before, to move away from policing into social workers responding to nonviolent crimes. I mean, what is the definition of that? I wonder, I bet you one thing they don't. I bet they don't use social workers to guard the mayor and city council members out there in LA. They'll take police from you, but not from them. But let me just read this part because we're just about out of time. I tell you what I want to do is, it says here on Monday, this is what de Blasio said. He said, confirm plans to slash police funding, telling reporters, I'm excited to say that we have a plan that can achieve real reform. He's excited to cut the police off. Excited. I mean, I can't imagine. Not think about being a mayor, having to cut the police budget. The last thing I would say would excite me. It would probably depress me. It would concern me, but it certainly wouldn't excite me. And I want to show this meme of the police officers, a thank you thing, if we can, about thanking the police, because, man, and I really mean this, for there are millions of us out here who believe this. We're being drowned out by the mob, but I want to thank police officers. If you're watching now or you're a family of a police officer, there are many of us who appreciate greatly what you do. And what I've shared this with you before, but I got to keep sharing it. My big concern with the volunteer military we have and our police officers who are overworked and underpaid, that if we could become a country that is not worth fighting for, who's going to volunteer for the military? And if we become a country not worthy of being served by the police, what are we going to become? I got a video we've played. I know you've seen this. I want to show you right now a video of, to me, some heroes, man. But these are just average Americans, quite wealthy probably, based on where they live. But they're standing up for their homes. If you're wondering what's coming to your neighborhood, because this is a ritzy neighborhood and they came there, what do you think is going to happen to, like my little middle-class neighborhood one day if the police are not around? Check it out. That's good enough. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show today as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please keep clinging to your Bibles and your guns. You're going to need, not just in Pennsylvania, but everywhere. Thank you for listening. Go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page. Share it, like it, share it with others. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. By God, one thing we all ought to agree on, we need to pray for this great nation. But as I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.